There comes a point where it isn't just one problem that wears you down. It's the weight of everything. You wake up already tired, as if the night didn't really do its job. You look at your phone, at the messages, the notifications, the news, and you feel that familiar heaviness settle over you before the day has properly started. There are things you need to do, people you need to answer, expectations you're supposed to meet. Sometimes you keep going out of habit. Sometimes you pause for a moment and think, very quietly, I'm so tired of all this. It's not always dramatic. Maybe there isn't one big crisis you can point at. Sometimes it's just the accumulation of small demands, small disappointments, small worries that never quite get resolved. The unread emails that never stop breeding. The conversations you replay in your head because you wish you had handled them differently. The feeling that you are falling behind in a race you never asked to join. The sense that you are giving pieces of yourself away to things that don't really matter, but you don't know how to stop. You might look around and see other people who seem to be functioning just fine. They work, they post, they laugh, they hustle. They look like they are plugged into life with a full battery, while you feel like yours is blinking red. On some days, you still manage to fake it. On other days, the mask slips, and you find yourself staring at a wall, or scrolling mindlessly, or lying on your bed in the middle of the afternoon, wondering how you got so drained. When you say, I'm tired of everything, it doesn't only mean you need sleep. It often means you are tired of trying to be the person you think you're supposed to be. Tired of carrying a version of yourself that never feels quite good enough. Tired of being strong when you feel fragile. Tired of pretending to be interested in things that leave you empty. Tired of always needing to have a plan, a goal, a direction, when part of you just wants to stop and breathe. Maybe you are tired of fixing things. Fixing other people's moods. Fixing problems at work. Fixing family issues that repeat the same patterns no matter what you do. Maybe you've become the person everyone turns to when they are struggling, but you don't know where to put your own pain. You might even feel guilty for feeling this way, because you know there are people who have it worse. You tell yourself you should be grateful. You list the good things in your life, but the body doesn't lie. It still feels worn out. There's another kind of tired that sits underneath all of this. It is the exhaustion of constantly fighting yourself. The part of you that wants to rest, and the part of you that says you're lazy. The part of you that wants to say no, and the part that forces you to say yes, because you don't want to disappoint anyone. The part that longs for a simple, quiet life, and the part that scrolls past endless images of success, achievement, and perfection, and whispers, "You're not enough. Do more." You may not talk about this often. It's hard to put into words without sounding dramatic or ungrateful. But at night, when the noise of the day fades and you're alone with your thoughts, it becomes louder. You lie there in the dim light of your room, staring at the ceiling or the glow of your phone, and somewhere inside the words form, "I'm tired." Not just sleepy. Tired of everything. This video is for those nights. Not to tell you that you should be more productive, more positive, or more disciplined. You have heard enough of that. This is not another voice demanding that you push yourself. It is an invitation to lay your burdens down for a while, to look gently at the life you are living and at the expectations you are carrying, and to ask whether all of them truly belong to you. We will move slowly. We will look at the world that surrounds you and how it constantly tells you to go faster, do more, be more. We will look at how your nervous system tries to cope with this speed, and how ancient wisdom traditions, Buddhism, Stoicism, Taoism, offer another way to exist in this strange time. We will talk about guilt, about self-worth, about the pressure to always be improving. And little by little, we will explore what it might mean to believe the words, "You have done enough for today." For now, you do not need to fix anything. You do not have to make any promises to change your entire life by tomorrow morning. You are allowed simply to listen. Let the words wash over you, like someone talking softly in the next room, while you drift in and out of awareness. If you fall asleep while listening, that's perfectly fine. The whole point is to give your mind permission to stop gripping so tightly. Notice your body for a moment. The weight of your head on the pillow, the way your shoulders are resting, the rise and fall of your breath. You have carried yourself through another day. However messy or unproductive or confusing it felt, you made it here. That counts for something. As we begin this journey, you can imagine that you are setting down a heavy backpack just for a while. The problems of tomorrow will still be there when the sun rises. But tonight, you are allowed to explore a different question. What if you didn't have to hold everything all the time? When life feels like too much, the instinct is often to push harder or to shut down completely. There is a third option, to pause, to understand, and then to move differently. That is what we are going to explore together. And the first step is to see clearly the world you are living in. The world that makes almost everyone feel like they are behind, no matter how much they do. If you could step outside your own experience for a moment and look at the culture around you like an anthropologist, you would notice something strange. Almost everyone seems busy. Almost everyone says they are tired. Almost everyone feels like they are not doing enough. You can see it in your friends, in your family, in strangers online. This isn't just your private failing. It's a shared condition. Modern life is built on a constant stream of more information, more options, more goals, more comparison. Your grandparents might have spent most of their lives in one town, with a small circle of people and a limited view of what success looked like. You, in contrast, carry a window in your pocket that shows you hundreds of lives every day. People starting companies, traveling the world, getting in perfect shape, reading a book a week, meditating at sunrise, building beautiful homes, raising families, creating art. It's inspiring, but it can also be crushing. Your brain was not designed to compare itself with thousands of people at once. It was designed to navigate a small tribe. When you scroll, your mind quietly builds an impossible average of all those lives. The entrepreneurial drive of one person, the body of another, the relationship of a third, the spiritual depth of a fourth. Then it holds that composite image up against your own very human day, the dishes, the emails, the moments of doubt, and decides you are failing. Everywhere you look, there is messaging that tells you to optimize yourself. Productivity videos, morning routines, no excuses motivation, side hustles, biohacking, personal branding. The underlying assumption is that you are a project that must be constantly upgraded. Rest is not something you simply deserve as a living being. It is something you must earn by checking enough boxes. Even hobbies and relaxation become content, something to be documented and shared. Another area where you can succeed or fail. Work, too, has changed. For many people, it no longer ends when they leave a building. Email, chat apps, and shared documents follow you home and into your bed. You might answer a message late at night or think about a task as you fall asleep. The boundary between on and off has faded. Your nervous system stays in a low-level state of alert, as if something could demand your attention at any moment. All of this creates a subtle pressure that never fully lets up. You may not consciously think, "I must always be improving," but your environment repeats the message so often that it becomes a background hum. When you sit still and do nothing for a while, part of you panics. You feel like you're wasting time, falling behind, letting life slip away. The irony is that this panic itself wastes your energy and steals the very rest that would make your life feel richer. There is also the cult of happiness. You are told that life should feel consistently exciting, meaningful, and fulfilling. If you feel flat, numb, or bored, you assume something is wrong with you. In reality, human lives have always included stretches of ordinary days, mild moods, and quiet periods where nothing spectacular happens. But when you compare your inner life to everyone else's highlight reel, your normal moments look like failure. The mind concludes, I'm not living enough, I'm doing it wrong, and the tiredness grows. The result of all this is a constant sense of being behind schedule, behind peers, behind your own vague idea of where you should be by now, behind in money, in love, in purpose, in healing. You look at your age and think, by this point, I should have more clarity, more success, more confidence, more whatever. And because the target is undefined and always moving, you can never quite reach it. From the outside, someone could look at your life and see a person who has achieved a lot, or at least survived a lot. They might see resilience, creativity, humor, kindness. They might see someone doing their best in a confusing time. But from the inside, the dominant feeling is often, I am not enough. I am not doing enough. That inner verdict is exhausting. It turns every day into a test you fear you are failing. It's important to recognize that this feeling is not entirely your fault. You were born into a system that rewards constant output, constant attention, constant availability. You were not taught how to rest, only how to push. When you finally reach the point of being tired of everything, it is not because you are weak. It is because you have been running a race with no finish line. Seeing this clearly is the beginning of freedom. If the problem were that you personally were broken, the solution would be to fix yourself completely, a hopeless task. But if much of your exhaustion comes from trying to meet impossible expectations, then another kind of solution becomes possible. Questioning those expectations. Asking who benefits from you always feeling behind. Asking whether a good life has to look the way you've been told. Ancient philosophies were born in much simpler worlds, yet they noticed something similar in human nature. The Buddha saw people chasing satisfaction in endless loops, never content with the present moment. The Stoics saw citizens obsessed with status, terrified of losing face. Taoist sages watched people struggle to control life instead of moving with it. They may not have known about smartphones and social media, but they understood the fatigue that comes from always chasing and never arriving. In the next chapters, we'll look at how your body and nervous system react to this constant pressure, and how these older wisdom traditions can help you step out of the trap. But for now, let this truth sink in. You are not alone in feeling this way. The tiredness you carry is not a private shame. It is a natural response to a world that asks too much and rests too little. You do not have to earn the right to feel exhausted. You already are. The question is, what you will do with that awareness. Collapse further into numbness, force yourself to push even harder, or gently begin to live differently. This audio is an invitation to explore that third path. When you are tired of everything, it's easy to assume the problem is purely mental. Too many thoughts, too many worries, too many decisions. But underneath the thoughts, there is a body, and underneath the worries, there is a nervous system that has been running hot for a long time. You can't fix exhaustion only in the mind when the body has learned to live in permanent go mode. Your nervous system has two main branches that matter here. One revs you up, prepares you to act, pushes you into motion. The other slows you down, helps you digest, repair, rest. In a balanced life, these two take turns like day and night. You wake, move, focus, handle things. Then you wind down, relax, sleep, restore. But modern life often feels like a long, extended day with no real night. Even when darkness falls outside, your inner world stays bright and buzzing. Think about how many times a day your body is nudged toward alertness. A notification sound, a sudden email from work, a message that carries a hint of conflict, a news headline that spikes fear, a video that pumps adrenaline or outrage. Each of these is a small ping to your system. Pay attention, something might be wrong, you might need to act. On their own, they are manageable, but stacked together hour after hour, They teach your nervous system that the world is a place where you must always be ready for the next thing. You start to feel this physically. Maybe your shoulders creep upwards toward your ears without you noticing. Maybe your jaw is often clenched. Maybe you have a constant tightness in your chest, a restless feeling in your legs, a stomach that never quite relaxes. You might interpret these sensations as anxiety or stress, but at a deeper level, they are signs of a body that doesn't feel safe enough to fully rest. When your body learns this pattern, rest itself becomes suspicious. On the rare occasions when you have nothing to do, you might feel uneasy. You reach for your phone, open a tab, think of a task, not because you truly want to, but because stillness feels wrong. The nervous system that has been trained to be on doesn't know what to do with off. It interprets quiet as danger. In the wild, animals rest only when they feel safe. If they are tense, they stay alert. Part of you is still operating with this ancient logic, even while lying on a modern bed in a modern room. This constant activation drains your energy, even when you haven't done anything visibly strenuous. You might sit at a desk all day and still feel as tired as if you had run a marathon. That's because your body has been running a different kind of race, a marathon of micro-alerts, muscle tension, shallow breathing and suppressed emotion. By the time night comes, there is very little battery left. And yet, ironically, sleep can be hard to reach because the same system that kept you alert all day doesn't suddenly know how to calm down. When you try to rest in this state, the mind often rushes in with commentary. Why am I still tense? Why can't I relax like other people? What's wrong with me? These thoughts add another layer of stress. The nervous system hears the alarm. Something is wrong with us. It tightens further. The cycle continues. Tension creates worry. Worry creates more tension. And you end up exhausted and wired at the same time. To break this cycle, it helps to stop blaming yourself for simply being tired. Chronic activation is not a moral failure. It is a learned physiological state. Just as your body learned to stay on edge, it can learn to soften, but it needs consistent signals that it is safe. That safety doesn't come from martial discipline or forcing yourself to be calm. It comes from small, repeated experiences of genuine rest. Moments when nothing bad happens, even though you are not on duty. Something as simple as a slow exhale can start this process. When you lengthen your out-breath, your body receives a message. We are not in immediate danger. When you feel the weight of your body supported by a chair, a bed, or the ground, and you really let yourself feel it, another message arrives. We are being held. We don't need to hold ourselves up so rigidly all the time. These are small physical truths that bypass the mind and speak directly to the nervous system. Over time, as you practice this kind of gentle attention, you may notice that some of your tiredness lifts, not because life has become easy, but because you are no longer fighting it with every muscle. You don't have to wait until everything is perfect to give your body permission to relax a little. You can begin here, in the middle of the mess, by noticing how hard your system has been working just to keep you going. Ancient teachings recognize this connection between the state of the body and the state of the mind. The Buddha didn't sit rigidly forcing his way to enlightenment. He sat quietly under a tree, observing how sensations and thoughts moved, allowing them to rise and fall. The Stoics didn't try to bully their bodies into submission. They practiced facing discomfort calmly so their nervous systems would not panic at every bump. Taoist sages didn't glorify tension. They praised softness, flexibility, the ability to bend. Understanding your nervous system's role is not the whole answer to feeling tired of everything, but it is a crucial layer. As we move into those older perspectives, Buddhism, Stoicism, Taoism, it helps to remember that their aim was not to make you superhuman. It was to show you how to suffer less in the life you already have. Many centuries ago, in a world without smartphones and deadlines, a man named Siddhartha Gautama looked around and saw something that puzzled him. People with very different lives, rich and poor, young and old, powerful and powerless, were all touched by the same basic discomfort. No matter how much they had, they seemed restless. No matter how hard they tried, their happiness slipped through their fingers. He devoted his life to understanding why. What he eventually taught is now known as the Four Noble Truths of Buddhism, but you don't need to remember the formal names. At their heart, they say something simple. There is suffering in life. Suffering has causes. It can be eased, and there is a path to easing it. The Buddha wasn't saying life is only suffering. He laughed, loved, and appreciated beauty, but he insisted on looking honestly at the part of experience that hurts, the same part you feel when you say, "I am tired of everything." One of the causes of suffering he identified is craving, the constant reaching for something that is not here yet, or the refusal to accept something that is here. Craving isn't just about material things. It's also about wanting a different version of yourself, a different past, a different present. When you feel you must always improve, always achieve, always fix, you are caught in craving. You are chasing a future moment where everything will finally feel okay. But the moment you reach one goal, the mind moves the finish line. The chase never ends. From this perspective, your exhaustion is not surprising. You have been running mentally, even on days when your body stayed still. You have been telling yourself, "I will rest when things are more stable, when you have more money, when you are in a relationship, when you lose weight, when you finish this project." The Buddha would gently point out that there will always be another when. If rest is always postponed to the future, it never truly arrives. Another cause of suffering he pointed to is clinging, holding tightly to experiences, people, or identities that are, by their nature, changing. You might cling to an image of yourself as productive, strong, always available. When life asks you to slow down, to be weak for a while, to say "I can't," clinging makes this feel like failure. You might cling to what others think of you, replaying their reactions in your mind, trying to control their opinions. The tighter the grip, the more any change hurts. Buddhism offers a different way of relating to life, not by withdrawing from it completely, but by seeing more clearly how temporary everything is. Joy is temporary, pain is temporary, energy is temporary, exhaustion is temporary. Your current chapter, however heavy, is not the whole book. This doesn't mean you ignore your feelings. It means you stop treating them as permanent verdicts. When you lie in bed thinking, "I'm tired of everything," the Buddhist approach would not be to argue with you. It would be to invite curiosity. What is this tired made of in this moment? Is it tension in your chest? A heaviness behind your eyes? A thought that says, "I can't keep doing this"? Can you notice these components without immediately turning them into a story about your entire life? For a few breaths, you might just feel heaviness as heaviness without adding, "because I'm a failure," or "because I'll never be okay." This simple act of noticing without judgment creates a tiny gap in the endless chase. In that gap, something softer can appear, compassion for yourself. The Buddha taught that kindness towards suffering, your own and others, is a powerful antidote. Instead of piling criticism on top of your exhaustion, you might silently say, "This is hard. I am struggling. May I find some ease?" It sounds simple, almost too simple, but in practice, it can change the tone of your entire inner world. Buddhism doesn't demand that you leave your job, your relationships, or your responsibilities. It does suggest that the way you relate to them matters. If you approach everything as a ladder to climb toward worthiness, you will remain tired no matter how high you climb. If you can see your tasks as just tasks, your roles as just roles, and your feelings as passing weather, a little space opens up. You can still work, care, strive, and create, but you are no longer using every action as proof that you deserve to exist. Imagine carrying a backpack full of stones, believing that every stone is necessary to prove your value. The Buddha would say, put the backpack down, look inside. Some stones are real responsibilities you can't simply throw away. Others are self-judgments, expectations, comparisons that you picked up without noticing. You are allowed to remove those. You are allowed to walk a little lighter. None of this is meant to minimize your fatigue. It is meant to say, there is a reason for it, and it is not just that you are weak. You have been caught in a pattern the human mind has been trapped in for thousands of years. Many before you have felt the same, tired of everything, and many have found a way to live more gently. Their insights, like the Buddha's, are not meant to be worshipped from afar. They are tools you can pick up and test in the middle of your own life. As we shift to the Stoic perspective, you'll see a similar theme in different language. The Stoics weren't monks under trees. They were citizens, soldiers, even emperors, living busy lives. They too asked, in a short human life, what really matters? The Stoic philosophers of ancient Greece and Rome lived in noisy cities, full of politics, gossip, and uncertainty. They weren't strangers to stress. Yet when you read their writings, you feel a surprising calm. They knew that life is short and unpredictable, and instead of panicking, they used that fact to focus on what truly matters. One of their central practices was to remember that every day could be their last. To modern ears, this can sound morbid, but they didn't dwell on death to scare themselves. They did it to sharpen their sense of priority. If time is limited, not every worry deserves equal attention. Not every demand deserves a yes. Not every opinion of you is worth carrying around. When you are tired of everything, it can be helpful to borrow this Stoic lens. Imagine, just for a moment, that you could zoom out on your life and see it from the end instead of the middle. Looking back, would you want to remember that you spent years constantly proving yourself to people who barely knew you? Would you want to remember that your main companion was exhaustion? Or would you wish you had allowed yourself more rest, more small joys, more honest moments with the people you love? The Stoics divided life into two categories: what is within your control and what is not. You cannot control how long you live, what other people think, or many of the events that happen to you. You can control your intentions, your effort, your honesty, your attitude. For a tired mind, this distinction is liberating. You can stop wasting energy on things you can't change and redirect it toward the few things you can. Consider how much of your daily exhaustion comes from trying to manage other people's perceptions. Maybe you replay conversations to make sure you didn't sound stupid. Maybe you say yes to requests when every part of you wants to say no, because you fear being seen as selfish or difficult. Stoicism would invite you to ask, whose life is this? Is your purpose here to keep everyone comfortable or to live in alignment with your own values? This doesn't mean becoming careless or unkind. Stoics valued justice, compassion, and responsibility. But they also believed that you do not owe your health and sanity to every demand placed on you. If you are constantly tired because you're living a life scripted by others, something important is being neglected: your own capacity to choose. Another Stoic idea that speaks directly to your tiredness is the acceptance of imperfection. The philosopher Seneca wrote about how no day will ever go exactly as planned, and no person will ever embody virtue perfectly. Expecting perfection from yourself or from life is a guarantee of disappointment. Instead, he suggested aiming for progress, not flawlessness. Do a little better where you can. Learn from mistakes. then let go. Think about the weight that lifts if you don't have to get everything right. You can send a message without editing it 10 times. You can make a decision without mapping every possible outcome. You can have an off day without turning it into a story about your entire character. You are not a machine that must perform at 100% every day. You are a human being with fluctuating energy, changing moods, and real limits. From a Stoic perspective, living well is less about endlessly achieving and more about showing up honestly in the moments you're given. Did you act with integrity? Did you try to be kind? Did you use your abilities where they mattered? If the answer is sometimes imperfectly, but sincerely, that is enough. You don't have to exhaust yourself trying to impress an invisible scoreboard. When you lie awake feeling worn out, you can try a small Stoic reflection. If today were the last day of my life, would these particular worries still matter? Some will. Others will shrink. The point is not to ignore real problems, but to put them in perspective. If you wouldn't care about it from your deathbed, maybe it doesn't deserve so much of your energy now. Stoicism doesn't cancel your obligations or magically refill your energy, but it offers a quieter criterion for choices. Instead of asking, will this make everyone happy? You can ask, is this aligned with the person I want to be in this short life? Sometimes the answer will still be, yes, I will do the hard thing. Other times you may realize that your exhaustion comes from saying yes where a clear, respectful no would have been more honest. Recognizing what truly matters to you prepares the ground for something Taoism emphasizes strongly: the art of doing less, not more. If you don't have to carry everything, if not every task is sacred, then perhaps you are allowed to loosen your grip and move with life instead of constantly pushing against it. If Stoicism teaches you to focus on what you can control, Taoism reminds you that not everything needs to be controlled. While the Stoics stood in marketplaces and palaces, the Taoist sages often retreated to mountains and rivers, watching how nature moves without hurry or anxiety. They saw that water, trees, clouds, and animals all follow a rhythm. They rest when it is time to rest, act when it is time to act, and do not spend their nights wondering if they are doing life correctly. At the heart of Taoism is the idea of the Tao, the way, the flow, the underlying pattern of the universe. Human beings, they said, get tired and unhappy when they stop moving with this flow and try to force their own agenda onto everything. We push when it's time to wait, hold on when it's time to let go, rush when it's time to be still. Over time, this constant friction wears us down. The Taoist concept of Wu Wei is often translated as non-doing, but that doesn't mean laziness. It means not forcing. It means acting in a way that feels natural and appropriate to the moment, rather than driven by fear, pride, or compulsive striving. Imagine trying to untie a knot by pulling it tighter. That's what many of us do with our lives. We respond to difficulty by clenching harder, thinking more, adding more tasks, tightening every muscle. Wu Wei would suggest the opposite. Loosen your grip and see if there is an easier way. Think of a time when you were in the zone, maybe while drawing, writing, talking with someone, or working with your hands. You weren't overthinking each step. You were simply responding to what was in front of you, one small move at a time. You were active, but not strained. Hours might have passed without you noticing. That state of absorption is close to Wu Wei. Your actions arose naturally from the situation, rather than from a stressed internal monologue. Taoism invites you to live more of your life in that mode. Not by quitting your responsibilities, but by dropping some of the unnecessary tension around them. You still answer emails, but you don't mentally rehearse them for an hour afterwards. You still clean your space, but you don't turn it into a test of your worth. You still pursue goals, but you are willing to adjust or abandon them if they clearly fight the natural direction of your life. One way to practice this is to notice where you are forcing things that don't seem to want to move. Maybe you push yourself to socialize when your body and heart are begging for quiet. Maybe you keep chasing a particular person's approval even though they never seem to give it. Maybe you cling to a role or identity that once fit but now feels too tight. In each case, the more you push, the more exhausted you become. Taoism would advise stepping back. If a door won't open after a reasonable effort, perhaps it is not your door. If a relationship only functions when you twist yourself into knots, perhaps it is not aligned with your nature. If a plan requires you to constantly override your own health, perhaps the plan is wrong, not you. Doing less is not a cop-out. It can be an act of deep trust in the larger flow of your life. This doesn't mean giving up at the first difficulty. Rivers still carve through rock, but they do so by persistence and flexibility, not panic. They adjust their path, go around obstacles, find the low points. You can bring that same spirit to your days. Instead of waking up and thinking, I must conquer everything, you might ask, what is the most natural, honest thing I can do next? Then you do just that one thing. After it's done, you ask again. As you experiment with doing less, you may fear that your life will fall apart. You may imagine that if you relax your grip even slightly, you will become lazy, unproductive, or irrelevant. Taoism suggests that the opposite may happen. By no longer wasting energy on forcing, you free up energy for what truly matters. You become more responsive, not less. You have more to give where it counts, because you are no longer trying to control every wave on the ocean. This attitude prepares the ground for addressing one of the most draining forces in your inner world, guilt and shame. It's one thing to be tired. It's another to be tired and constantly accusing yourself of not doing enough. To rest, you need more than techniques. You need a different relationship with that harsh internal voice. By now, you might understand some of the external reasons you're exhausted. The pace of modern life, the constant stimulation, the cultural pressure to always be on. But there is another layer of tiredness that comes from within. The relentless commentary of your own inner critic. Even when you stop moving, this voice keeps working. It tells you that you are behind, lazy, selfish, weak. It turns every attempt at rest into a crime scene. Guilt and shame can have useful roles. Guilt signals that you may have acted against your own values and need to repair something. Shame warns you when you fear losing connection or acceptance. But when these emotions become chronic, when the inner voice never lets up, they stop guiding you and start crushing you. Think of how many times a day you may silently tell yourself, I should be doing more. You sit down for a few minutes and immediately think of something productive you could be doing instead. You take a day off and spend most of it feeling bad about all the tasks you're not tackling. You consider saying no to a request, then hear a voice saying, you're selfish if you don't help. Over time, this constant self-accusation drains more energy than the tasks themselves. Where did this voice come from? It's rarely innate. It usually sounds like a mix of people who were important early in your life. Parents, teachers, peers, cultural figures. You might have learned, directly or indirectly, that love and respect were tied to performance. When you did well, you received praise or affection. When you struggled or slowed down, you received criticism, distance, or disappointment. A young mind quickly concludes, to be safe, I must always be doing, improving, pleasing. The tragedy is that this voice pretends to protect you. It says, I'm hard on you, so you won't fail. I'm pushing you, so others won't reject you. But in practice, it keeps you in a state of constant tension and self-doubt. Even when you achieve something, the inner critic moves the bar. You did that, sure, but But what about this next thing? There is no finish line where it says, you've done enough. You can rest. If you wait for that permission from the critic, you will wait forever. To begin softening its grip, you first have to notice it. You might start paying attention to how you speak to yourself in small moments. When you forget something, do you say, "Of course, you idiot"? When you are tired, do you say, "Get it together, everyone else handles more"? When you feel overwhelmed, do you tell yourself, "You have no right to feel this way"? Each of these phrases is a small knife turning in the same wound. Once you see the pattern, you can ask an important question. Does this voice actually help me live better? Does it truly make me kinder, more capable, more present? Or does it mostly make me anxious, frozen, or secretly resentful? For most people, the critic's net effect is negative. It may sometimes push you into action, but at a high cost. Chronic exhaustion, difficulty enjoying what you accomplish, and a deep sense that you are never quite okay. An alternative is self-compassion, not as a vague idea, but as a concrete way of responding to your own struggle. Self-compassion doesn't mean making excuses for everything or avoiding responsibility. It means talking to yourself the way you would talk to a friend you genuinely care about. If a friend came to you exhausted and ashamed, saying, "I'm tired of everything, and I feel like a failure," would you tell them, "Yes, you are"? "You're pathetic"? Or would you say, "You've been carrying a lot. No wonder you feel this way"? Let's see how we can lighten the load. You are allowed to offer that same understanding to yourself. When you catch the inner critic yelling, you might pause and add another voice in your mind. "Of course you're tired. You've been trying so hard. It's okay to rest." This second voice won't silence the first immediately, but it creates a counterweight. Over time, if you keep practicing, the compassionate voice grows stronger and the critic loses some of its authority. From a Buddhist perspective, this shift is an act of wisdom. The harsh self is just another mental construction, not the ultimate truth. From a Stoic perspective, berating yourself for what you cannot control is irrational. From a Taoist perspective, all that inner harshness is simply more forcing, more tightening against the natural flow. In every tradition, kindness toward oneself is seen not as indulgence, but as clarity. As you begin to question the voice that says not enough, you create the possibility of resting without drowning in guilt. You start to see that you can be a responsible, caring person and still say, "I'm done for today." You can acknowledge your imperfections without turning them into a justification for endless self-punishment. You can be tired without having to prove you deserve it. This change doesn't happen all at once. It's a practice, and like any practice, it grows through repetition. Each time you choose not to believe the inner critic entirely, each time you respond with even a small dose of compassion, you are rewriting your internal script. And that script is crucial because it determines whether rest feels like a crime or a right. Rest is one of the most natural things in the world. Every creature does it. Trees have winters, oceans have tides. Animals lie down, close their eyes, and trust that the world will keep turning without their constant supervision. Yet for many humans, especially in this era, rest has become complicated. It is tangled up with guilt, fear, and identity. You don't just rest, you judge yourself for resting. If you trace this feeling back, you may find a belief like this at its core. My worth is measured by my output. If you are doing, producing, helping, achieving, then you feel safe. If you are still, you feel exposed. Your mind starts listing reasons you haven't earned this break. Tasks unfinished, goals unmet, standards not reached. Even when your body is sitting or lying down, your mind is still running laps. To reclaim rest, you first have to rewrite that equation. Your worth is not the sum of your checkboxes. It isn't a weekly report. It doesn't vanish when you stop moving. You didn't earn your right to exist by being productive as a baby. You simply existed and were cared for. Somewhere along the way, that simple truth got buried under layers of performance and expectation. Learning to rest without feeling useless is not about never doing anything. It is about giving rest its own value, recognizing it as part of a healthy, meaningful life, rather than a pause between real activities. Rest is not just recovery for work. It is a way of being alive, noticing your own existence without immediately trying to improve or justify it. Practically, this starts small. You might experiment with tiny pockets of deliberate rest during the day, 5 minutes where you sit or lie down, put your phone away, and do nothing in particular. Your mind will protest. It will tell you there are better things to do. It will try to pull you back into planning or worrying. Your task is not to have a perfectly empty mind. It is simply to stay put, to feel your breath, your weight, the sounds around you, and to say, for these 5 minutes, I'm allowed to just be. At first, this can feel uncomfortable. You might even feel more tired when you stop, because your body finally has space to show you how exhausted it is. That's okay. You are not doing it wrong. You are meeting yourself honestly. Over time, as this becomes more familiar, the discomfort often softens. Rest starts to feel less like an enemy and more like a friend you had forgotten. You can also experiment with how you talk to yourself when you rest. Instead of, I shouldn't be lying here, you might say, this is part of how I stay human. Instead of, I'm wasting time, you might say, I'm giving my mind and body what they need. Instead of, other people are working harder, you might acknowledge, I don't know what anyone else is truly carrying. I only know that I am tired, and that ignoring that has never ended well. Another helpful shift is to broaden your idea of what counts as valuable activity. Society tends to glorify visible, measurable output, money earned, tasks completed, trophies won. But there are quieter forms of value that rarely show up on charts. Listening to a friend, sitting with your own emotions instead of numbing them, letting your nervous system settle so you don't snap at people you love. Rest enables these things. A rested person can be more patient, more present, more creative. In that sense, rest is not the opposite of contribution, it supports it. From a Stoic angle, resting can even be seen as an exercise of wisdom. If your body and mind are telling you that you are at your limit, ignoring that is not heroic, it's foolish. The Stoic ideal is not to destroy yourself. It is to use your limited time and energy in alignment with what truly matters. Sometimes, what matters most is not another task, but your own capacity to show up tomorrow without collapsing. From a Taoist angle, rest is simply aligning yourself with the rhythm of life. No field produces harvest every day. No tree grows leaves every month. There are seasons of activity and seasons of stillness. If you try to make every day harvest season, the soil of your life becomes depleted. Doing less for a while is not failure. It is preparing the ground for whatever comes next. As you practice resting without accusation, you may begin to notice something surprising. Your exhaustion starts to carry less of a story. Instead of, I'm tired because I'm inadequate, it becomes, I'm tired because I'm human and life is demanding. That small shift opens the door to a different kind of action, not the frantic, fear-driven kind, but something softer, guided by small acts of surrender instead of constant battle. Surrender is a word that can sound like defeat. In a competitive culture, it's often associated with losing, giving up, being weak. But in many spiritual and philosophical traditions, surrender has a different meaning. It means releasing the illusion that you can and must control everything. It means aligning with reality as it is, instead of exhausting yourself fighting what you can't change. You don't have to surrender your entire life all at once. In fact, trying to do that is overwhelming and abstract. What you can do is practice small acts of surrender in ordinary moments. These are quiet choices that say, I accept that I am one human being with limited energy, limited knowledge, and limited control, and that's okay. One small act of surrender is allowing yourself to stop when you reach your limit, even if there is more you could theoretically do. You might decide that at a certain time in the evening, you will close your laptop, regardless of how many tasks remain. You acknowledge that there will always be more to do, and that constantly chasing finished is a recipe for burnout. Surrendering here doesn't mean neglecting your responsibilities. It means recognizing that an exhausted version of you tomorrow is not better than a rested one who did slightly less today. Another act of surrender is letting conversations or situations be imperfect. You may have a habit of replaying every interaction, trying to polish it in your mind. Surrender says, what's said is said. I can apologize or clarify if needed, but I cannot edit the past. Instead of rehearsing alternative versions late into the night, you might write a short note if something truly needs repair, or simply accept that some awkwardness is part of being human. You can also practice surrender in your relationship with outcomes. You can put in effort, study for the exam, prepare for the interview, show up for the relationship, but you surrender the fantasy that you can control the exact result. This is where Stoicism and Taoism meet. You do your part, wholeheartedly, and then you release your grip. You recognize that the universe is larger than your plans. Success and failure, as defined by the world, are not always accurate measures of whether something was worth doing. In your inner life, small acts of surrender might look like letting feelings move through without trying to fix them immediately. When sadness arises, instead of launching into a mental investigation of what's wrong with you, you might simply feel sad for a while, trusting that the emotion will ebb. When fatigue appears, you might acknowledge it instead of overriding it with caffeine and self-criticism. This kind of surrender is not passivity. It is cooperation with your own nervous system. Surrender can also apply to other people. You might be used to managing those around you, smoothing conflicts, anticipating needs, protecting them from discomfort. While care is beautiful, carrying responsibility for everyone's happiness is too heavy for one person. A small act of surrender is acknowledging I cannot live other people's lives for them. You can support, listen and love, but you cannot make their choices or prevent their pain. Accepting this can feel frightening at first, but deeply relieving over time. Perhaps the most profound act of surrender is letting go of the idea that you must become someone completely different before you are allowed to rest. You surrender the fantasy of the perfectly productive, endlessly calm, universally admired self. Instead, you accept the actual person who is here, imperfect, often confused, sometimes brilliant, sometimes messy, always in progress. You stop fighting your own existence and start working with it. Each of these acts is small on its own, but together, they change the texture of your days. Instead of feeling like you're constantly pushing a boulder uphill, you may start to feel more like you're walking along a path, still effort, but with pauses, curves and scenery. You still have responsibilities, but you are no longer gripping them with white knuckles. As you surrender bits of unnecessary struggle, space opens up to ask deeper questions. If you are not here solely to produce, to impress, to grind, then what is a good life for you? Not for the world, not for your parents or your peers, but for you. What would feel meaningful even if no one else applauded it? Much of your exhaustion may come from chasing someone else's idea of a good life. Maybe you internalize the belief that success means a certain career, a certain income, a certain relationship status by a certain age. Maybe you absorb the idea that productivity is the highest virtue, and that rest, art, play, or contemplation are luxuries. When your actual life doesn't match this template, you feel behind, even if you're quietly living in ways that are truer to your nature. Redefining what a good life means doesn't happen overnight. It begins with honest observation. Ask yourself, when have I felt most alive, most at peace, most like myself? The answer might not involve spectacular achievements. It might be a memory of sitting on a balcony at dusk, talking with a friend. It might be a morning walk alone. It might be working on a creative project that no one else cared about, but that absorbed you completely. Those moments are clues. They show you where your values actually live, beneath the noise of external expectations. Perhaps you value depth over speed, simplicity over status, authenticity over constant performance. If that's the case, trying to live in a way that contradicts those values will always tire you out, no matter how successful you appear. From a Stoic perspective, a good life is one where your actions align with virtues like courage, wisdom, justice, and moderation. From a Buddhist perspective, a good life reduces unnecessary suffering and increases compassion for yourself and others. From a Taoist perspective, a good life moves in harmony with the larger flow instead of constantly straining against it. None of these definitions mention follower counts, income brackets, or how busy your calendar is. You can begin to craft your own definition by writing it down, even if it feels rough. You might say, a good life for me is one where I have enough to live without constant fear, where I can be honest with the people close to me, where I have time to rest and create, where I am not always rushing. You might add, a good life is one where I treat myself and others with kindness, even when things are difficult. This doesn't magically solve practical challenges, but it gives you a compass. When new opportunities or demands appear, you can ask, does this move me closer to or further from my own idea of a good life? If taking on another project means sacrificing all your quiet time, and you've decided quiet is essential, perhaps the answer is no. If a simpler job gives you more space for relationships and creativity, perhaps that is a form of success, even if the world doesn't recognize it as such. Redefining a good life also means updating your relationship with time. You may feel like you are constantly racing an invisible clock, but if your goal is not to cram as much achievement as possible into every year, the urgency softens. You can see your life as a series of seasons rather than a single exam. There can be seasons of intense work and seasons of rest, seasons of exploration and seasons of stability. You don't have to justify each season to anyone but yourself. As your personal definition solidifies, something interesting happens. Your exhaustion becomes more informative. Instead of just thinking, I'm tired, I'm failing, you can interpret tiredness as data. I am exhausted because I have been living against my own values. I've been saying yes when I mean no. I've been chasing what others say matters instead of what truly matters to me. That insight doesn't erase fatigue, but it points to changes that can gradually ease it. To support this new way of living, it helps to end your days differently. Instead of collapsing into sleep as if you have barely escaped another battle, you can create a small ritual of closure, a moment where you tell yourself sincerely, you've done enough for today. As night falls and your day comes to an end, your mind might automatically start reviewing everything that happened. It highlights the things you didn't do, the conversations that felt off, the tasks that remain. It rarely gives equal attention to the quiet victories, the moments you were kind when you could have been harsh, the small responsibilities you fulfilled, the simple fact that you kept going. To counter this bias, you can practice a brief nightly reflection before sleep. It doesn't have to be elaborate. You might lie in bed or sit for a moment with the light low and ask yourself 3 questions. What did I carry today? What did I do well enough? What can I put down until tomorrow? When you ask what you carried, think beyond visible tasks. Maybe you supported someone emotionally. Maybe you managed your own anxiety while still showing up for work. Maybe you made decisions without clear guidance. Maybe you navigated grief, loneliness, or uncertainty quietly, without anyone else noticing. Acknowledge these invisible weights. They are part of why you feel tired. When you ask what you did well enough, resist the urge to dismiss everything. Look for specific examples, even if they seem small. I answered that difficult message as kindly as I could. I showed up on time even though I wanted to stay in bed. I took 5 minutes to breathe instead of exploding. These are not trivial. They are evidence that, despite your struggles, you are trying to live consciously. When you ask what you can put down, imagine placing certain worries on a shelf in your mind. You are not throwing them away or pretending they don't exist. You are simply acknowledging that there is nothing more you can do about them tonight. The email you cannot send until tomorrow. The decision that needs more information. The person whose response is out of your hands. Each one can be gently set aside with the words, "Not now, tomorrow." After this reflection, you might say to yourself, aloud or silently, "I have done enough for today." If the critic protests, listing all the ways you fell short, you can answer, "I may not have done everything, but I have done something, and I will do more tomorrow. Tonight, I rest." This isn't self-deception. It is a fairer accounting of your day than the critic's one-sided report. This simple ritual can slowly change your relationship with sleep. Instead of seeing it as an interruption of productivity, you begin to see it as an essential part of your life, a time when your body and mind integrate everything that has happened. You go to bed not as a failure collapsing, but as a human being returning to the place where all creatures return, stillness. To support this, you can also soften your surroundings. Dimming lights, turning off notifications, and perhaps listening to a gentle voice or music, like this audio, can cue your nervous system that the active part of the day is over. You are crossing a threshold from doing to being, from carrying to being carried. As you lie down, feel the literal support beneath you, the mattress, the pillow, the blanket, gravity itself, holding you to the earth. You don't have to hold yourself up right now. You can let your weight be fully received. With each exhale, imagine that you are handing a little more of the day over to the darkness outside, trusting that the world will not fall apart if you stop thinking about it for a few hours. You may still wake up in the night. Thoughts may still arise. That's okay. Each time you can return to the phrase, "I've done enough for today. I can rest over time." This becomes not just a sentence, but a belief, a deep permission that sinks into your bones. Part of what keeps you exhausted is the belief that if you don't worry enough tonight, tomorrow will be worse. The mind acts as if constant preoccupation is a form of preparation. But think about the mornings after nights when you barely slept, replaying everything in your head. Did the extra thinking truly help? Or did it simply leave you foggy and brittle when the new day arrived? Trusting tomorrow doesn't mean pretending everything will be easy. It means acknowledging that you cannot live it in advance. You can plan certain things, of course. You can set an alarm, lay out clothes, write down key tasks. But beyond that, tomorrow will bring its own mix of expected and unexpected moments. You will meet them with the energy, clarity, and resources you have then, not with the tiredness and anxiety you feel now. From a Stoic point of view, it is irrational to suffer twice for the same possibility. Once in imagination, once if it actually happens. From a Buddhist point of view, living in the future is a source of unnecessary suffering because the only moment you ever truly inhabit is the present. From a Taoist point of view, the river of life keeps moving, whether you obsess over every bend or not. Trust, in all these traditions, is not naivety, but realism. You can practice this trust in small ways. When a worry about tomorrow arises at night, you can acknowledge it. Yes, I am nervous about that meeting. And then ask, is there anything I can do about it right now? If there is, such as jotting down a note or setting a reminder, you do that and then let it go. If there isn't, you say, this belongs to tomorrow's version of me. You might even picture that version of yourself. A little more rested, a little more clear, standing in daylight rather than darkness. Let them handle it. Often, we underestimate our own resilience. We look at future challenges and think, I won't be able to cope. Yet if you look back at your history, you'll see that you have coped with many things you once thought were impossible. You may not have handled them perfectly, but you are here. You survived heartbreaks, changes, losses, and shocks. Trusting tomorrow includes trusting that you will find a way through whatever comes, just as you have before. It also includes trusting that you are not entirely alone. Even if you feel isolated, there are people, known and unknown, who have walked similar paths. There are resources, seen and unseen, that can support you when needed. You don't have to carry every problem in your private backpack forever. Some loads can be shared, some can be put down, some may be taken from your hands in ways you can't foresee. As you cultivate this trust, the edge of your tiredness softens. You no longer feel you must solve your entire life before you're allowed to sleep. You accept that life is an ongoing process, with no moment of total completion. There will always be more to do, more to learn, more to feel. But there will also be more chances to rest, more chances to start again, more chances to experience beauty and connection. Tonight, trusting tomorrow means allowing this day to end. Whatever you did or didn't accomplish, whatever went well or badly, it is now part of the past. You can review it with kindness, learn what there is to learn, and then release it into the dark. Tomorrow will come with its own light and its own challenges. You don't have to drag yourself there in chains. You can walk there more lightly if you let yourself sleep. As this journey comes to a close, you don't need to hold on to every idea we've touched. You don't need to remember which insight came from which philosophy. Let all of that settle like dust in a beam of light. What matters now is much simpler. You are here, you are tired, and you are allowed to rest. Lie, however, is most comfortable. Let the weight of your body sink into the mattress. Feel the support under your head, your back, your legs. You have carried your body through another day. It may have felt clumsy, painful, or heavy at times, but it has brought you here. For a moment, thank it silently, your feet for walking, your hands for working, your heart for beating without being asked. Bring your attention to your breath. Don't try to change it, just notice it. The coolness or warmth of the air as you inhale, the slight pause at the top, the soft release as you exhale. Imagine that each out-breath is carrying away a small fragment of the day, an image, a sound, a worry. You don't have to decide which. Your body knows what it's ready to let go of. If thoughts arise, let them. They are like visitors passing through a hallway. You do not have to invite every one of them inside for a long conversation. You can acknowledge them with a nod. Yes, that happened. Yes, that might happen. And then return to your breath, your body, the feeling of being held by the bed. Quietly, repeat to yourself, I have done enough for today. Let the words land not just in your mind, but in your chest, your stomach, your muscles. I have done enough for today. You are not claiming perfection. You are not saying there is nothing left to improve. You are simply recognizing a fact. The day is over. Whatever was possible within it has already been attempted or missed. Nothing new needs to be done right now. If your inner critic protests, imagine its voice growing softer, as if it were speaking from another room. You can tell it, "Thank you for trying to keep me safe, but your work is finished for today. You can rest too." Picture it as a tired guard dog finally laying down, the house quieting as the lights go out one by one. Expand your awareness outward for a moment. Beyond your walls, other people are also lying in their beds, in different cities and countries, with their own worries and weariness. You are not the only one who feels tired of everything. There are countless hearts beating in the dark, each carrying its own stories and struggles. Let this thought bring a sense of connection rather than comparison. You are part of a vast, imperfect, tired, beautiful human family. Return again to your breath. Inhale, exhale. The world is still spinning. The stars, whether you can see them or not, are still burning quietly in the sky. Somewhere, waves are hitting a shore. Somewhere, wind is moving through trees. Life continues without your constant supervision. You can set down the role of manager for a while and simply be another being in this universe, resting. If sleep comes, let it take you. If it doesn't come quickly, that's okay too. You can still lie here, eyes closed or half open, letting your body relax in whatever way it can, listening to the sounds around you, feeling the gentle rhythm of your own existence. Even this is a form of rest. You are giving yourself time without demands, time without performance. You have walked through a lot to reach this point, not just tonight, but in your life so far. You have survived every hard day, every difficult season. You have faced things that once seemed impossible. You have grown in ways you rarely give yourself credit for. All of that is inside you as you lie here now. So once more, whisper to yourself as if speaking to a dear friend, "You've done enough for today." You can rest. Let the words echo softly until they blur into the edge of sleep or into a quiet, watchful peace. Either way, know this. Your value does not depend on staying awake and worried. It does not depend on carrying everything alone. Tonight, for these hours, you are free to set it all down. Good night.